seems to be some momentum around the league that the famous Tush push could be banned.
You know what's coming.
They push, they sneak, they're in for the touchdown.
Tush push play, I was never been a big fan.
I couldn't believe that it was legal because it was illegal on the field goal.
I feel like it's a football play.
We don't coach a push play any different than we coach a quarterback sneak play.
My biggest concern is the health and safety of the players.
I don't think it's a great football play. It's more of a rugby play.
Somebody get physical and stop the play.
We all have to figure out a way to stop it.
If we stayed the same, defenses would have caught up to it.
I believe both teams can be just as good in a traditional form.
The most hotly contested issue at the league meetings will come to a head on Tuesday.
We begin NFL Live with some breaking news out of the league meetings. Adam Schefter, was there a decision made on the Tush push?
Yeah, Laura, they have tabled the discussion until the May meeting in Minneapolis, and that tells you that there was more discussion needed about this hotly contested topic that has garnered more support and more momentum than I think the Eagles expected or wanted. I think many people thought that it would not gain traction, but there are teams that have complained about it. And keep in mind, to ban the Tush push, you would need the support of at least 24 NFL teams. Right now, the league does not have that, and so the league has tabled discussion until May, and essentially the conversations then will continue. And the league is thinking, at this point in time, the league wants to make sure that it's being proactive and that it's out in front of this rule and preventing a injury before it occurs on that particular play. Conversations will continue. This topic is not over.
Ooh, all right. So the wait continues for this Tush push, but ESPN has tracked Tush pushes for the last 3 seasons, and the Eagles and Bills have run more than the rest of the NFL combined. Not only that, Philly and Buffalo have been much more successful with the play overall, getting a first down or touchdown on 86% of their attempts. The rest of the NFL has been successful on 72% of Tush pushes. The Eagles had some fun with this news, posting hand to the peach. I like that. I like that we're starting the show that way, too. We welcome you in here. We got Tim Hasselbeck. We got Ryan Clark. Adam Schefter's with us throughout. More news to come, of course, and some rule changes that we'll get to. But, RC, where do you stand on the Tush push and the idea of banning it at some point?
Well, I think that's where it's moving, right? Before they went to these league meetings, I didn't expect it to even pick up this much momentum, but we're talking about a play that not every team in the NFL uses. I don't believe half the teams in the NFL use the Tush push. And so now it's going to be easy to get other teams who don't use the Tush push to say they don't want to see the Tush push because they got to stop the Tush push, and the Tush push never happens to work for them in a positive manner. But when you think about the play in itself, you got to give me some data that more people are getting hurt. You got to give me some data that the long-term effects on the offensive lineman, the defensive lineman, the quarterback, the running back, the linebackers is something that we should be concerned about. Because if you can't do that, then you're just doing it because you don't want to learn how to stop it. And you got a quarterback that can't run it. And so to me, as I see, they're like, okay, you ban the rugby, but you can also push the runner when he gets close to the goal line. Push the runner when he gets close to the first down. Are you going to remove that from football as well to say that you can't aid or push the quarterback in the Tush push? I believe it's too much to do, and I think people just have to learn to stop the play instead of trying to outlaw the play.
Listen, RC and I have known each other for probably at least, I don't know, maybe 20 years now.
Shoot.
Been teammates at ESPN, teammates at Washington before that. I have never agreed more with Ryan Clark than I do right now. Like we see this exactly the same. I just like the reality. Like this is wild to me that we're even discussing it. RC's exactly right. Like, where's the injury data? The injury data shows up on the big long collisions. Guys running 40 yards before big collision on kickoff. They studied that for years. They knew it was a dangerous play, and it took them years after that to get that play out of the game. And now all of a sudden, 2 teams are good at running quarterback sneaks and pushing a guy from behind, and we want to get it out of the game. This is absurd to me. Like, it's just, I'm shocked at the momentum that this has. I get it. It's not an exciting and fun play to watch, but neither's the kneel down. We're not taking that out of football. So this is crazy.
There are people, I have heard people suggest here that because there is no injury data, that they're using that as an excuse to cover up for the fact that they just want the play out of the game because it's a boring play. Believe that or not, that is the thought of some people here at the league meeting in Palm Beach. And again, there is no injury data, but I think there are executives on teams that feel like they're trying to get out in front of it and prevent an injury from happening before it actually occurs. But before they can even get to vote on that, what I would really like to see happen is Ryan Clark say tush push 10 times consecutively over and over and over in a tongue twister. Can you do that, Ryan Clark? Tush push, tush. Come on, Ryan. Let me see it, RC.
It was pretty close just now. It was pretty close just now.
RC, I was struggling off the top. I got myself out of breath trying to say it too many times. So I'm going to be glad when we're not saying it that much anymore. But either way, let's get to some more rule changes, okay, that don't involve tushes or pushes. There's going to be 3 major rule changes for the 2025 season. Both teams will not be allowed to possess the ball in regular season overtime games. Will now be allowed. This aligns with the postseason overtime rule. So the OT period will remain at 10 minutes. Just really important that they will be allowed to both possess the ball. The replay assist system has been expanded and can reverse flags on hits to defenseless players, face mask, horse collar, tripping, and a few others. And the touchback spot has been moved from the 30 to 35-yard line on kickoffs. The Lions' proposal to eliminate the automatic first down on defensive holding or illegal contact did not pass. There's also one more new rule for 2025. First downs will now be measured with an 8-camera Hawkeye system instead of by officials on the chain crew. So the chain gang, that's not going to be a thing anymore. A similar technology has been used with success in the UFL. It still won't change a bad spot, but will allow crews to quickly make first down decisions. The technology is there, and finally we're getting caught up with the times. New on NFL Live, Brian Schottenheimer speaking at the league meetings today, where he was asked about his options in the draft for the Cowboys.
You're always looking for game changers when you're picking 12th. Like, we don't want to ever pick 12th again. All right, let's be honest. We don't want to pick that high. If you're looking for guys that influence the game, how do you influence the game? You rush the quarterback and you get sacks, strip sacks, fumbles, whatever it is. You score touchdowns. Okay. When you're building a roster, kind of think of it from building it from outside in, based on guys that get isolated a lot. Because when you're isolated and you can't help, it's a pretty daunting task sometimes.
RC, what does Dallas need to look at adding in the draft later this month?
Well, I got to hang out with Adam Schefter last night at this big event, and everybody just pretty much let me go wherever I wanted to be, VIP, as long as I held Schefter's backpack and phones as we walked around. But I did run into Brian Schottenheimer, who is excited about his opportunity in Dallas. But the big thing is, who are you going to add to CeeDee Lamb? Who are you going to add to Jake Ferguson? Are we going to find some skilled players that could create big plays offensively? Everything seemed so hard for the Dallas Cowboys last year. We were looking for CeeDee Lamb to make a play. And then once Dak Prescott was going, they didn't seem to have a playmaker outside of 88 and the occasional opportunity for Jake Ferguson. For me, it's going to be a good place to go out and get one of those speedy wide receivers who you can add to CeeDee Lamb. That could be an extreme great complimentary number 2 and get the running back later in the draft.
Yeah, it's a good point. Look, it's funny. You look at their roster and you say, well, they could pick this position. They could pick this position. Like, hey, you know what? They could use another one of these. I think you can do that at receiver. I think you can do it at running back, even though they've addressed it in free agency. You go to the defensive side of the ball, and you can make that same argument at linebacker, at defensive tackle, at another edge player. And so that's the hard part. I think that's usually an indicator that the team's got a ways to go. So I think you got to get it right. And to RC's point, somebody that really makes a difference. And that's a little bit what Brian Schottenheimer was talking about. Look, I could see it being running back, even though they've addressed it in free agency. I just don't know that the top guy will still be there when they're picking. So, help for Dak Prescott, who they're going to need to play well if they're going to have a chance.
Yeah, just briefly, I want to commend RC on the ability to avoid tweeting something out on Adam's phones while he was in possession of them last night. That's a lot lot of self-control that you displayed right there, because I wouldn't have been able to avoid the temptation. All right, more on Dallas. Jerry Jones was asked about any progress on a long-term deal with Micah Parsons. This is what he said.
We are there. I don't view it as urgent at all. And the idea that the only success is getting a contract done at an early time is incorrect. And I'd rather pay more and get it right than I had pay less and screw it up.
What do agents think of you got when you have those direct talks with players?
The agent is not a factor here, or something to worry about. And I don't know his name.
Woo, okay. Micah Parsons did not love to talk about his agent, posting, "David is the best, and I will not be doing any deal without David Mulgeta involved." That's his name, by the way. Like anyone with good sense, I hired experts for a reason. There's no one I trust more when it comes to negotiating contracts than David. There will be no back doors in this contract negotiation. Adam, what more can you tell us about a potential new deal for Micah Parsons?
Well, Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons were clearly discussing the parameters of a new contract, and Jerry Jones there came out and spoke out against the agent. I don't think that statement obviously played well with Micah Parsons. We can get Ryan Clark to talk about it. He knows David Mulgeta very well as well here, but this deal is not getting done without the involvement of David Mulgeta, despite the fact that Jerry Jones thinks it could. And I think the two sides made progress, but there's not going to be a deal here that gets done without David Mulgeta's involvement at this time. And speaking of deals that are a ways apart, Brock Purdy and the 49ers have been talking. They're not close to a new deal at this time. The 49ers have made it very clear, as Jed York has said, they want him to be a 49er for a, quote, long time. But there is a disagreement over value right now. The 49ers have his contractual rights this year, could franchise him 2 more years. And the Pittsburgh Steelers continue to wait for an answer from Aaron Rodgers, but the Steelers owner and president Art Rooney II said today that all signs are positive and that he hears that essentially Aaron Rodgers eventually will be coming to Pittsburgh. Last weekend, Rodgers and DK Metcalf threw together a throwing session at UCLA, so clearly Rodgers is seriously thinking about signing with Pittsburgh, but no agreement yet. No signs of something of the white smoke emanating from the Vatican just yet. And until there is, we will wait for an answer from Aaron Rodgers.
I like that Art Rooney's like, well, man, I'm hearing this. I'm like, so are we, but I don't know. When are we ever going to figure it out? We're not sure yet. When we do, Adam will tell us. And more from him. Let's recap how we got here. Last March, Atlanta signed Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million free agent deal with $100 million guaranteed. Then 6 weeks later, the Falcons stunned the NFL world, drafting Michael Penix Jr. 8th overall. And it was the 4th straight draft the Falcons took an offensive skill player in the top 10. So Kirk Cousins ended up starting week 1, but he was benched in week 16 after a rough stretch of 5 games where he went 1-4 with 1 touchdown, 9 interceptions. Penix won his starting debut, but lost Atlanta's final 2 games of the year, both in overtime. Raheem Morris addressed the Cousins situation this morning, saying, "I know exactly who he is. There's definitely a human side when we want to see him go out and be the best version of himself. This is not a thing where we're holding you back. If the opportunity presents itself into something that's good for both of us, that's good for the Falcons and for Kirk Cousins, we'd certainly like to see that happen." Morris was asked if he expected Kirk Cousins to be at OTAs, saying, quote, "I'm not going to be foolish to think that he's going to show up for voluntary work." So at least maybe that expectation isn't there. But Adam, what are you hearing about Cousins and a potential trade? As you heard Raheem Morris leaving the door open certainly there.
Yeah. Well, Laura, the Falcons have held steadfast to the idea that they plan to hold on to Kirk Cousins. But what I would say here is that there are a few teams that still have not addressed their quarterback needs. Minnesota still needs a backup quarterback. Cleveland still needs another quarterback. Pittsburgh's waiting to hear from Aaron Rodgers. And there is the idea that Kirk Cousins still remains the break the glass emergency quarterback solution that a team that doesn't come up with its quarterback in the draft always can turn to Atlanta and try to trade for Kirk Cousins. The issue is Atlanta is going to want the acquiring team to assume some of the guaranteed money. And that's what would hold up a deal. And so right now, everybody is standing firm. Nobody's in any rush to get anything done, but I don't think we've heard the last of the Kirk Cousins topic, and it will resurface again at some point.
Well, Adam brings up a great point about the acquiring team having to digest some of that money. That's going to be a tall task because, look, Atlanta's on the hook for it. So you're basically doing them a favor. You've got to be really desperate at quarterback for that to happen. And Kirk is not going to go to a place where he finds himself in the same exact situation that he's currently in Atlanta. And so, some of those teams, whether we've said, look, it's Cleveland or it's Pittsburgh for that matter, like those teams could end up drafting a quarterback as well, and he's back exactly, where he's sitting right now. So I think this is one of those scenarios where, look, like Cousins probably finds himself in a really good situation from the standpoint of his money's not going to change. He's going to, be a pro, support Penix as best that he can. But ultimately, it would have to be a perfect situation for him to want to go somewhere else and play.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think, too, from the Atlanta side, holding on to Cousins. God forbid something happens to Penix Jr. They've got a great backup there in Cousins. Just really bizarre how it all shook out. RC, as Atlanta does turn the page, though, fully entering this Michael Penix Jr. chapter, how can the team continue to support the young QB?
Yeah, listen, I think Atlanta turned the page when Michael Penix Jr. became the starter. But it's going to be about Zach Robinson and Michael Penix Jr. linking and doing the things that are best for him. We saw last year that Bijan Robinson is an absolute stud, not only in the run game, but the pass game. Can they get Kyle Pitts to be a big part of this offense? We saw Drake London and Darnell Mooney, but let's do things that Michael Penix Jr. does well. What surprised me last year was his ability to move. If you can get into the play action, move him off of the spot, and I feel have a better chemistry with Michael Penix Jr. than Zach Robinson had with Kirk Cousins. That'll be huge for this team because the guy has an absolute cannon for an arm.
Yeah, to the point of the cannon arm, 14% of Penix's attempts were thrown 20 or more yards downfield, almost double Kirk Cousins' rate. When O'Connell.
All about is just winning football games, and it's not all on him. It's collectively, it's everybody. It's all 11 that are out there. It's the entire team. It's our coaches, trainers. Everybody's involved in this thing and helping us put the best product out there. But a lot of times the quarterback's going to get judged on
every year, and I'd say the next step for him, and he knows this, and every year, like last year, he came to us, everything we wanted him to do in the offense, he did, and then he began to bring stuff to us as to, hey, man, I can see this look, let me get to this play. I know I've got these options in the bag, but let me get to this as well, right? Those are the things where he's, okay, here we go, man. That's beginning to show, and I would anticipate
for most of his high school and college career, and so he's very comfortable there. We're going to work to see the comfort level under center and how much of that applies. We had a lot of success where I was last, that going under center for the run game did translate in play action. Whether that works for us in Chicago, time will tell.
I like it. I hear you, Coach. But Caleb Williams hasn't had much experience being under center in his career. In 3 seasons in college, he ran just 8 under center plays, 0.1% of his total dropbacks. He was great in those 8 plays, though, throwing 4 touchdowns with a 98 QBR. Small sample size was good. He got way more experience under center in his rookie season, but the results were bad. His 25 QBR was last in the NFL. 50% of Ben Johnson's Lions plays were from under center, which was the highest rate in the NFL. So kind of interesting numbers there, Tim. Does putting Caleb under center make things easier for him, you think?
It does. It's always easier when a quarterback can play under center and from the shotgun. And I kind of found it somewhat interesting that, guys that are playing in the National Football League, this idea that, they've played the majority of their snaps in shotgun. Hey, you can't go play under center. Like, I don't know that you're qualified to be a pro if you can't. And I would point to Arizona and what they did this past season. Kyler Murray had been a shotgun quarterback pretty much his entire high school and college career. You just look at the first, from 2019 to 2023 of snaps under center. And then last year was a big departure from that. And just look at the production during that stretch. There's something about a quarterback under center, especially in play action game, where you're turning your back to the defense, you're hiding the football, It's hard to decipher run and pass against good offenses. It helps the quarterback. It also helps your run game. So, look, I think it's going to be something they major in, in Chicago. I think it's going to help Caleb, and I think it's going to help the Bears.
Ben Johnson has been highly successful with the quarterback under center, and now you pair that with Caleb Williams and his ability to use his legs in the pocket, also make every single throw. I think it can be a good thing. It's also just good for the offense to provide some space for Caleb Williams where he's not immediately getting the football in his hands and trying to make a play. Here's the thing that I like about it, though. It's Ben Johnson saying that the run game needs to be first. And the run game is better when the quarterback is under center. It's not going to be all about how Caleb Williams plays when we talk about passing the football. It's going to be how this offense allows Caleb Williams to take some of the pressure off of his right shoulder by doing other things extremely well. The big thing for me is going to be his grasp of the offense. Does he know exactly where to go with the ball quickly? Does he get through his progressions quickly? And when it's time to go above and beyond what the playbook says, can Caleb Williams do that and protect the football?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, and also interesting to see where they go in the draft. Let's get to some breaking news, though. Roger Goodell addressing the latest on the tush-push debate tabled. Here's what he said just moments ago.
Listen, the discussion on the tush-push was very good. It was, we showed a lot of data, a lot of questions from the clubs, a lot of discussion about it. I think there are safety issues that are being considered in that case. We have very little data from it, but it's beyond data. There's also, there's the mechanism of injury that we study, that type of thing that leads us to show the risk involved with a particular player. There's a lot of discussion about going back to the previous rule, back to pre-2004. The reality of it is, I think that's makes a lot of sense in many ways, because I think it expands it beyond just that single play. There are a lot of plays where you see someone pulling or pushing somebody that are not in the tush-push formation that I think do have an increased risk of injury. And so I think the committee will look at that and come back in May with some proposals.
Okay, so now we're looking to May for all of this. Adam, you said something yesterday when we were waiting for more news around this, that if Roger Goodell wanted the tush-push eliminated, that he could probably make that happen. What do those comments that you just heard from Goodell tell you now?
It tells me that obviously the league is taking a long, hard look at that. And if you cipher through the words that he said there's no injury data, but there's a mechanism in place where there could be injuries and there will be further discussion, and they could go back to the rule pre-2004 in which you were not allowed to push a ball carrier the way the Eagles have on the tush push. And just reading between the lines on what NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said moments ago to the assembled media here at the league meetings in Palm Beach, that tells me that the league and other owners are interested in having the tush-push banned. And this conversation will continue. They probably did not have the support they needed to get all the votes they needed, but Roger Goodell is not done with this issue, and I think right now it would be a surprise if this play were in place at the start of the 2025 season.
The tush-push's gone, y'all. That's a wrap. When Roger gets up there and he starts saying, I don't care if people been injured yet, but we know that people can get injured. And as a matter of fact, we hate to play so much. It's taken so much of the uncertainty out of football because it works so well when these two teams do it. We're going to change the whole rule all the way back to when old freaking Ryan Clark was still playing football. That's how much this play ain't going to be around, y'all. So Philadelphia Eagles, Buffalo Bills, just get ready. You're going to have to run the quarterback sneak the regular old way because Roger Goodell just told Adam Schefter and everybody over there, like 3 miles from where I am, that it's a wrap. The play is gone.
And obviously, Ryan Clark will not have to worry about saying tush-push any longer in the 2025 season.
Is it too soon for #RIPTP? Should we get that going today?
No, it's right
It's
now.
over? Yeah.
Get it started today.
All right. All right. Clear, the last 2 seasons were no fun in New England. Take a listen.
I wanted to try to do whatever I could to get back to a system and a situation where we had hope, and I hope that we're never drafting number 4 again in my lifetime. The last 2 years have been really difficult. The worst 2 years of our ownership. The bottom line is winning games, and these last 2 years have been brutal.
Goodness. Tim, what more do you want to see New England do on the personnel front to try to make things easier for Drake May?
Yeah. Well, I would say I feel like they've gotten off to a good start this offseason. Mike Vrabel's come in and said, look, we're guys like Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins, guys like that on the offensive side of the ball. And I think it's probably fair to say, previous quarterbacks, between Brady and Drake May have not been supported with good supporting cast. And so I think continuing to do that, they obviously done that, in free agency. I think doing that in the draft is a good idea. I think, attacking the offensive line, which has also been a position that they've struggled with. I think May can be an absolute superstar. I think he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah.
It still is a dependent position, and so you've got to give him kind of the minimum tools around him in terms of guys up front, run game, and guys that can catch passes. I actually feel like they're off to a decent start, though.
The one thing that the Patriots have done is they've identified the quarterback. And that's the hardest part about trying to win in this league. You lucked up with Tom Brady, and now when Drake May, you make that pick 3rd overall last year, and you got an absolute stud at the position. Do y'all know what Robert Kraft sounds like to me? He sounds like a man that ain't lost in 2 decades. As a matter of fact, he sounds like a man that dominated for 2 decades. My dog like, man, these last 2 years not winning Super Bowls been absolutely stinking miserable. You think? Welcome to the NFL, Robert Kraft. And so now it's about figuring out how do we surround Drake May with the people to make him his absolute best. We saw a ton of times last year this dude making lemonade out of tomatoes. And so now that you add a Mac Hollins, you add a Stephon Diggs, get him another piece, get him some more protection, get him somebody explosive on the outside. And I think the sky's the limit for this young man, especially the way they shored up some spots defensively as well through free agency.
Yeah, I love this number. Jaden Daniels was the only rookie with a better QBR than Drake May last year.
You're in year 4 now. How important is it for you to add a young quarterback to the mix as well?
Yeah, I think as many good players as we can add, we'll take. So right now we have the 3 guys in the quarterback room. We'll see what happens here over the next, call it month, if you will. And, whoever's in that room, we'll do the best job we can of coaching them up.
For more on all things Giants, we bring in Jordan Renan, our Giants reporter. And Jordan, Dable was not the only Giant to speak this week. Fill us in on what GM Joe Schoen had to say down at those league meetings.
Yeah, Joe Schoen made it very clear the Giants are not going to force a quarterback with the number 3 overall pick. The value has to match that draft spot. Actually, the quote that he says, if it's not the right guy, that's not a good plan. Now, obviously, this all relates likely to Shedeur Sanders. Cam Ward's expected to be the number 1 pick in this draft. That then puts Shedeur Sanders in the possibilities for the Giants with the number 3 overall pick. Now, the Giants aren't done scouting Shedeur Sanders yet. He'll have his pro day later this week. The Giants are going to send a large contingent down to Colorado and continue their evaluation. They're not quite there yet on making a decision, but it sure sounded from listening to Joe Schoen that there is the possibility that they do go non-quarterback. That puts Abdul Carter, and also you're talking about
Travis Hunter.
Some of the other top draft picks. Yeah, Travis Hunter, the other top draft picks, the other non-quarterbacks that are available in this draft. And you came away thinking that there's a good chance, or at least that they're going to be in that mix. Now, I'll also like to add this when you're talking about the quarterback position. The Giants have done a lot of research recently, a lot of work on Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. So that's another quarterback I think to keep in the realm of possibilities for the Giants, not necessarily maybe at pick number 3, but maybe later on in the first round, or potentially early in the second if he happens to be there.
Yeah, that if is important, Jordan, to think if Jackson Dart could still be around. I think he's going to end up in the first round. But either way, interesting stuff from you. By the way, we will have a lot of coverage of that Colorado Pro Day with Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders coming your way Friday. It'll be on NFL Live. Thanks to Jordan. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about this situation, maybe a predicament, some would say, that the Giants are in. RC, at 3, should quarterback be an option there for them? Or would you say adding some talent around Russ to try to make this team better is the better option to go for?
Well, I think the first thing is, Laura, you don't pick at 3 if you have a good football team. Right. That's not the way it works. And so obviously this team needs to improve in so many different ways, but you only grab the quarterback if he is that guy. And this is also an organization that's scarred by picking Daniel Jones 6th overall years ago and having that not work out. Think about last year where there was a run of quarterbacks by the 12th pick of the draft. They had an opportunity at 6, but they went with Malik Neighbors and they got an absolute star in the LSU wide receiver. And so for me, it's not about at number 3 fixing the wrongs of past drafts. It's about getting the best player for the organization in that spot. And if that's the quarterback, if it's Shedeur Sanders and you think he can be your quarterback for the next decade and a half, you pick him. If not, you pick a football player that immediately impacts the wins and losses of this team.
Yeah, and Ryan, I think a lot of times people think, listen, you and I both sitting here, undrafted free agents, like it's rarefied air when you're talking about guys in the very top of the first round, right? So they're edge rushers with just freakish athletic ability. It's like that's typically what it's reserved for. And I think that's just what the hesitation, on Shedeur Sanders is. He's a really good quarterback. He knows how to play the position. He's smart. He's accurate. He makes good decisions. What I have is some of the elite, physical tools that you typically see out of guys that get drafted at the very top. Now, people have gotten away from that and drafted people at the top without some of those skills. And you know what? It hasn't worked out. And so I think that's the hesitation. I think that's why New York does not go quarterback at the 3rd spot with Shedeur Sanders.
And Tim, following that, echoing that, if we all expect Cam Ward to go number 1, there would seem to be 2 elite prospects left on the board at that point. Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. Cleveland would figure to take one of them, and there's been a lot of smoke about Abdul Carter going number 2 to Cleveland, and that could potentially number 3. No, it's not the quarterback. But this team also is in need of star power. It's in need of elite playmakers ever since losing Saquon Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles. And Travis Hunter certainly could provide that to this New York franchise. He could give them a star. He could create some excitement. And it does feel more and more like there's the real possibility that the Giants might not be willing to go quarterback at number 3 and might prefer to take one of the prospects that's more elite in the eyes of personnel people.
I mean, I think by the time you get to this point, you've done so much evaluation on the Cam Wards and the Shedeur Sanders that'll have his pro day this Friday that you kind of have a feel for those guys. But when you go out and you get Jameis Winston, you go out and you get Russell Wilson, you're saying you want your quarterback room to be stable whether or not you draft a quarterback early in this draft. So they freed themselves of some of that